Welcome to the Data Friday. My name is Michael Olschimke. I'm the CEO of Scalefree. We run a session here every Friday to allow you, the audience, essentially to ask questions about Data 2.0, data-driven solutions, cloud solutions, anything MPP, anything data-driven is great. When we receive multiple questions, I'm going to cherry pick. You can use a form, which I show you after today's session. You can also use the chat here in the client. You can use the Q&A if you want to raise live questions. You can also raise your hand. I would give you a voice. Don't misuse that. But then you can essentially ask your question live. And if we receive multiple questions, we're cherry picking, depending on some essentially team. And that's it. So let's go for it. Yeah, if there would be no question at all, and we're coming into the summer break, right? So we're getting less and less questions at the moment. So if you don't want to hear something about the cluster, I didn't do much progress, to be honest. Shame on me. You have to ask questions essentially. So shoot them. But we still have some couple of questions. Let me just show it to you. 1 second. This question is essentially about different data modeling styles. So there are different data modeling styles. I'm talking about that in a minute. In this project here in this team, some of the colleagues went to the data vault certification that we offer essentially, or DVA offers, and then some other colleagues went to somewhere else essentially. And now the problem is these different philosophies, how we model in Data Vault 2.0 or how we model data vault, let's say that, are really different. Let me talk about that. One approach to use the data vault model, the hub sync satellites essentially, is to use what we call a logical data vault model. In a logical data vault model, you really model what your business should be like. I mean, you have customers, you have products, customers purchase products. You can describe those these business objects and their relationships and so on. So you model the way it should be according to the business. The problem is when you look at the source data, there's a gap between what you have delivered from the source and what you expect it should be. There's a gap in between. You have missing data, the data is dirty, you have duplicates and so on, right? And this gap, we have to essentially bridge using business rules, right? And if you follow this logical data vault design, you essentially implement business rules before the data vault design, the data vault model, and people typically don't understand what is the value of the business vault because they already have the business rules in the first place before loading the data vault, right? So that's the challenge. In this design, you essentially define a hub as a distinct list of business objects, not business keys, business objects, which means if you have duplicate customer records, you're selecting the best business object, the best customer record to be the master record, and that's the only one you're loading into the hub. So you have to make a decision, which one is the best, how do you cleanse this, and so on, right? You have to reduce them, you merge them, and so on. Now, the advantages of this design, the advantage is that you're optimizing the data vault model, your data warehouse model, for a specific business use case, for a specific business perspective, essentially. It's optimized for this use case. But it's also the limitation and the drawback, because you're limiting yourself to this one single business perspective. If you want to produce another one for a subsidiary or for your colleague next on the same desk, maybe on the same aisle, the problem is that colleague might want to do data mining or find out where these duplicates come from. You don't have these duplicates anymore, right? So you have to build another data warehouse solution for other people using or who want to apply different perspectives, essentially. The advantage is also the big disadvantage, essentially. So if that doesn't work, and essentially what you do is you just use the same concepts as legacy data warehousing, just this time with different tool, hub sync satellites, but you didn't change your mind, you didn't change the concept that you apply in the first place. So if that doesn't work, you go for the other extreme approach. That's what we call the source vault approach, where you essentially say, you know what, if the business can't be found in the source data set, well, why don't we just model purely the source data set, ignoring the business completely? We just model the source data as it is. That's what we call the source vault, where essentially the metadata from the source is important. The primary key of the source table becomes the business key, let's call it, in a hub. A foreign key becomes a relationship, and everything in between must be descriptive data in a satellite somewhere. You could build or derive this source vault from the source metadata without any data modeling knowledge. We don't need you for that, essentially, right? So you just generate if the source metadata is available. That's number one. Well, you could generate that. You can essentially profile it, right? But that's the challenge, essentially. So you don't have that. But the bigger disadvantage is something else. The bigger disadvantage is if you're using the primary keys as your business keys in the hub, those primary keys in the source system are typically not the business keys that the users work with. In a database basic lecture essentially at the university level, you learn that you're replacing business keys by surrogate keys in an operational system. So which means that you have technical IDs in the primary keys and the foreign keys. And those technical IDs are system-wide. They're only known by your specific source system, but not by the other ones. The other source systems introduce their own sequences, their own technical IDs for these business keys, which means that these IDs are not good for integration purposes. The hub will not integrate at all. It will collect all the technical IDs from all the source systems, from all the primary keys, and then you need a same as link to integrate those keys. That's the key 42 from system A identifies the same business object, the underlying business object, as the business key 55 from B. So you will need same as links just everywhere. And that means you need 2 more joins when you produce your targets. And that's so source vaults have a performance problem. They're imperformant and not integrated at all. So what we teach and preach here is essentially the middle ground. In between the business perspective or the business design, let's say, and the raw data, what we call the data-driven design. In the data-driven design, we essentially model the source data as it's been as the data is being delivered or stored in the source actually. Well, actually as delivered. So we model the source data as delivered, but it's being used by the business, and that's a reference to the business key that they actually use. So we look at the business keys that you're working with to identifying customers and products across these different source systems, and that defines the business key. But on the other hand, if you have duplicates, let's say a customer duplicate has multiple records in your CRM system, and because of that, they also have multiple business keys, 1 business key for each duplicate, inside a source system or across source systems. So what we do is, the hub contains a distinct list of all the business keys used to identify your business objects. All the business keys of all your duplicates we load into the hub, because that's how the business is working with your data. They should not have duplicates in the first place, right? But they have. At least they have a business key definition, but they have duplicates. That's what it is. So the decision, what is the master key, we don't do yet. First of all, it would require business rules to be applied when loading the hub and its satellites and the links referring to the hub, which you want to avoid. And we don't know the master key because it depends on the user in the specific perspective. And I fully agree with you. You should not have this discussion, and we shouldn't have this discussion. First of all, you should have all clean data, right? But the other thing is there should be a single version of the truth, right? You should have an agreement on what is a customer, what's a product, what defines revenues, and so on across the whole enterprise. You should have that, but you don't have that. That's what it is. That's a true reality, and we're not modeling the paradise here. Even though in the training I sometimes talk about how my paradise looks initially, but then we talk about reality, and that's what we have to model. The reality in your project with all the dirty data, with the duplicates, different users and different subsidiaries, applying different business rules, maybe because they're sitting in different tax regions, having to apply different tax laws. That's what it is. That's your reality, right? So, or they have different leading systems, secondary systems. They want to apply, they want to find out why they have these duplicates in the first place. They want to do data cleansing in source systems. Valid reason, right? Actually, you should, yeah, it's a very good reason. So we essentially capture all the business keys in the hub, and then using a same as link, either in a raw data vault or in a business vault, if we get these mappings delivered or if you calculate them, we deduplicate these records after the fact, after having loaded the data into the raw data vault, essentially. That's the basic idea. So, and those are 3, I would say, the major approaches that we see in the industry. We see a lot of logical models. We see a lot of data-driven models, thank God. The thing is, we at Scalefree, we teach and preach, and we teach and preach essentially the data-driven design. That's what we do in projects. That's what we do in trainings, essentially. That's what we do in workshops. I wouldn't say that. I mean, here's the thing. If you're lucky, if your customer is lucky, if your user is lucky, I'm happy as well. Or not like happy. If you're happy, if your customers are happy, if everybody's happy, I'm happy as well, right? So if you're happy with the logical approach, go for it. The problem is, that was a very diplomatic speech. I don't believe that you get essentially happy with it. Now, here's the thing. That defines essentially what means success here. What means when you're happy, essentially, right? My goal is, or our goal at Scalefree is, that we deliver results, business value on a frequent basis. Every 2, every 3, every 4 weeks, something. In the best case, into production. And that's what we do internally. Internally at Scalefree, we deliver new functionalities into an enterprise data vault every 4 weeks into production. In my opinion, a bit too slow. So I would like to streamline this a bit into 3 weeks and then 2 weeks. We'll see how it goes. But it's an ongoing approach essentially. But it's the idea. So you really want to deliver on a frequent basis, whatever that exactly means, new features into production to the end user, and not building a logical model for, let's say, 2 years, and then in a big bang you deliver everything. That's not going to happen, right? So if you're lucky, go. If you're happy, go for it. Fine, I'm happy as well. But I'm not sure if you get ever happy. That's my problem. Yeah, that's the basic idea. So those are the 3 approaches. There's more design philosophies essentially. How you could use the data vault, design the data vault entities, hubs, and satellites to model your enterprise data. But those are the 3 major ones. And the problem is, you need to be aware of what is the design in your project. You don't want to mix them. You really want to go for one of these approaches. What you might have is essentially a mix of data-driven design and a bit of source vault. If your business keys are clearly defined, then you might end up with surrogate keys in your hubs as well. So be it. But that should be the exception, not the rule, right? So yeah, but be aware of the design in your project and stick to one. That's what I would tell you. That's in the first place. But then in the second recommendation is really go for a data-driven design because that's really delivering business value on a frequent basis. And there's some other advantages like parallel loading. That you receive data from different source systems. You can load all this in parallel because there's no data dependencies up and until at least the raw data vault. You can ingest real-time data in real time, push it downstream into dashboards. Visualization works like a charm across systems and so on. So that's the idea. Cool. Good question. If you have a question like this, before we use this. If you have a question like this, use this link here, sfr.ee/dvfriday. That's where you can post a question like this. Upload pictures if you want from a team, from a whiteboard, all good. Make sure it fits on an HD screen, right? Because that makes a good video recording, essentially. It's readable. And then we also offered additional webinars on Warescape and DBT. That's at scalefree.to/webinars. That's where you find those registration links for these webinars, essentially. And upcoming, after my vacation, there is the Data Dreamland 2023 in Hanover, Germany. From October 10 to October 10 and 11, we have some fun stuff coming up. So not just data vault, right? So we do lots of data vault, lots of big data, lots of data-driven solutions. The topic is cost-efficient data solutions. We planned this a year ahead, essentially, and we were forecasting that the industry will not be in the best shape, like the economy not in the best shape. And it's true, at least for Germany to some extent. It's not too bad, to be honest, but it's interesting to have cost-efficient solutions, in our opinion. So that's the topic of most of the talks, actually. It's all about saving costs, cost efficiency, automation, and so on, right? That's the idea. So check it out, October 10, 11, only on site, not virtual, right? So it's all on site. Tickets are still available. I believe, I'm not 100% sure, that all the speaking slots are closed. So that's it. But if you have time, if you can make it over there, come over and join us in Hanover, Germany. All right, and virtually at the Data Vault Innovators Community, that's essentially a platform we came up with, essentially our Australian partners, essentially in Australia, sure. That's virtual. It's forum style webinars. That's also an interesting place to essentially ask questions, just like here a bit to some extent. Yeah, come there as well. Would be nice. All right, cool. Thanks for joining. Have a nice weekend. And we'll see you in 2 weeks from now, I believe. But there will be sessions here next Friday as well. Not in my basement, hopefully, but virtually. Thank you, guys. See you next time. Enjoy your free time. Thanks. Thanks for joining today. If you'd like to discuss this further, give us a call on the number below here, and we're happy to discuss this with you. See you next time. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.